I hope you don't mind. Jeff and Elon's going to join us for a bit today. They're not going to partake in the conversation, or, well, definitely not Jeff. He's a bit quiet at this stage. That's not a face mask he's wearing. I want to keep him from saying anything in case he delays future Mars missions or something like that. But in any case, welcome to the unknown experience. Today we're going to take a look at a bit of space news courtesy of Sky News Australia. I'm going to keep myself on screen in between the two gentlemen you'll see in the background. Then at least you'll have something to look at. But in all seriousness, let's take a look at some space news courtesy of Sky News Australia. Not my footage, Sky News Australia. I'll put the link to this particular bit of news in the description of the video, so you can check out Sky News. So here we go.
Cosmologist at ANU. Brad, thanks for your time, of course. We're both in lockdown, so COVID having some impact on us, but we'll plough on. You've been warning about this for a while. Space junk, it's rattling around outside in our orbit, and it's causing some damage.
There is, that's right. You know, we've talked about this before and some of the near misses that we've had. Well, it appears that in March, it's now been confirmed from data through the U.S. Space Force that now our second collision between two large bodies essentially in space has occurred. So back in 2009, we saw the first crash between two satellites. A Iridium satellite phone that was operated by the U.S. crashed into an old Russian Cosmos satellite. And when they crashed, they produced 10,000 pieces of debris. So you're kind of seeing the network here and that collision from 2009. Because when they crash, they produce this stream of debris that then gets stuck orbiting around. Well, in March this year, a Chinese satellite lost communication, and it was a bit debated about what exactly happened. Well, after some mapping of some objects in that near orbit, they have now picked up multiple pieces, at least 6 of largest size pieces of debris from that incident in March, from essentially an old rocket booster from the Russians back in 1996. So now we've had the second major collision from two objects in space. And this is always a worry because, as we said, there's a lot of this stuff in space. And once you collide, you just produce more bits of debris, which float around and can crash into more things.
Yeah, they need to be
So yeah, I'm going to pause it there for a second. So most of you, or some of you will know that SpaceX, or Starlink more particular, have been launching quite a number of satellites into orbit. The Starlink constellation will consist of over 10,000 satellites, potentially much more. And it's aimed at providing low-cost, high-speed internet to any place on Earth. Now, the thing is with the SpaceX or the Starlink satellites, they are being launched by or with Falcon rockets. But the thing is, every time you hear of a collision, it's usually between redundant old space junk like this piece of debris that's from an old Russian launch from the early 90s or mid-90s or something like that. Unfortunately, it collided with a Chinese satellite, like you can hear. But the fact remains, there is too much space junk. And the thing is, with the Starlink network, most of these satellites, once they are redundant, they are designed to fall back to Earth and they burn up in the atmosphere. They don't become excess space junk. They are literally designed to fall back to Earth and burn up. There was some issues in regards to astronomers and stargazers complaining that all these satellites will create glare, which will stop them or influence their capability of looking at the stars and doing the research and so on. After these complaints, there was actually attempts made to make the satellites a bit less reflective.
The speed they're going at. So as we looked at recently, they need that laser up and running to ping it all out of the sky, and they'll sort it out, hopefully.
Exactly, that's right.
Also, talking about this drilling mission in Mars, it was initially thought it was a success, this teeny tiny little drill getting some samples, but apparently it was too, dry and dusty to get anything of use.
Yeah, so Mars Perseverance, one of its big goal is to drill down, and you're kind of seeing the drill and the mound hole that it went into, to sample rocks, to scoop those rocks, analyze it on board, and then save it for a return mission back to Earth. But what they found when they took the photos is they essentially just went into this very fine ground, almost sandy like. So when they drilled down, they weren't actually able to scoop up any rock. They ended up empty, and it was quite disappointing because this thing is obviously very complex to be operating remotely on Mars with the communication delays. They can't do it in real time. So in order for it all to work flawlessly, except the only part was the land they chose, was a bit of a disappointment. It was always supposed to have multiple samples and go multiple places, so they will just have to venture to their second one. But a little bit of heartache for the scientists who came up empty, quite literally, on their first drilling attempt.
Well, they'll keep drilling. They'll get something, I'm sure. But there will be disappointment for those astronauts hoping to go to the moon in 2024.
Yeah, let me pause it there for a second again. Now, the thing with this particular mission, I've got a few issues with this. Yes, it's exciting, and I think it's a good thing. The Perseverance rover is a great idea, but I think it comes down to that's actually like a design flaw, or potentially a design flaw, because, well, they should have been thinking that this might be a possibility or this could happen. But then again, no one's done these things before, not in this way. But that's not the biggest thing that bugs me about this mission. Now, this rover's driving around on Mars, collecting samples, well, trying to, well, Mars dust at this stage. Hopefully they get some solid rock samples in the near future. But now the thing is, to me, they have a later mission close to 2030 or somewhere there that's planned to retrieve these samples. And if Elon Musk and SpaceX and some other missions are successful, they might have people on Mars by then. So you have to wait like an entire decade or more to get these rock samples back to Earth. And by that time, hopefully we'll be a bit closer to having human beings on Mars. I'm not talking about hundreds of human beings or settling on Mars yet, but maybe some exploration mission, a science mission aimed at that. So that's a bit of a letdown in terms of the time frame involved in getting these samples back to Earth. Yes, and even the robotic missions, I think by that time there should have been a few more robotic missions there. And I think the aid of robotics and electronics in terms of exploration is highly underestimated. Robots, rovers, robotics, they're not influenced by radiation, potentially, if you design them correctly, like humans. Humans can die because of radiation. Not necessarily the case with electronics and robots and rovers and so forth.
The delay, they can't get the suits made in time, really?
Yeah, look, and this is a bit of a sad state right now. So NASA has been trying to design new spacesuits for its moon mission.
Thanks, Sky News, for mentioning this. Actually, I mentioned this before you, so thanks for highlighting my point. Now look at these suits. These are the suits they spent hundreds of millions of dollars, probably close to $1 billion by now. They spent hundreds of billions of dollars on these suits, perfecting them. And the thing is, they had spacesuits in the 1960s. They went to the moon. They landed on the moon and physically walked on the moon. So why are they struggling to get suits made in 2021? And the thing is now, look at this particular instance on screen. This lady can't even walk up the stairs without help. These suits are ginormous. They're freaking uncomfortable as heck. And I know they say there's increased movability in these suits, but really look at the way this lady's going to walk up the stairs. And some of the stuff I'm saying now, these guys in the background are going to, well, these reporters are going to repeat what I said now, but I've said it a few months back already. So take a look at this suit. This is supposedly new space age high-tech spacesuits. Do you think this looks like 2021, the technology we have today? Does this compare to today's technology? Tell me what you think. I'm going to play it now and shut up for a bit.
A simple prototype that they unveiled. Look, and the reason it actually looks like funny is it's supposed to be more maneuverable. I know it doesn't seem like it trying to get up the stairs here. The previous spacesuits were so bulky, astronauts actually had a high rate of tearing their shoulders in them. So astronauts actually had a high rate of shoulder reconstruction surgeries because it was so hard to move. So they wanted to make things that were more modular, can fit better to the astronaut, and work better on the moon compared to what they had in the 60s. Now, this project is now running over time and over budget. The NASA Inspector General said it's now going to be as early as mid-2025 until these spacesuits are ready, and they were hoping to land humans in 2024, so it's going to push back that timeline a bit. So a bit of a
there you go. I'm going to pause it there for a second again to interrupt. Now, the thing is now, okay, fine, fair. They're saying it's going to be delayed and it might be in 2025 that the suits are ready only. And the moon mission was planned for 2024. Now, that's not the only delay. This guy over here, like, let me explain it like this. Elon Musk was awarded the contract for the moon lander mission. Okay, fine. Jeff Bezos was not happy about this decision. He went to court. So because of this appeal, there was delays. They ended up releasing, I think, $300 million for SpaceX to start with the moon lander, the construction and development of it. And like a few days later, Jeff Bezos went to another court, a higher court, I assume, and they froze the process again, delaying the mission once more. So I don't think there's any real chance of this moon lander mission, the lunar mission, going ahead at 2024, or potentially ever, the way it's going now, thanks to this guy that does not want to accept defeat. But enough marketing for this guy, so let's just continue with the
appointment. And it's like,
and of all the things to blow out that timeline, Brad, and we'll get these suits, that suit vision up again. I love the walking. It reminds me a bit of my toddler, actually, when she's in a bit of
and
all the things to delay it. Yeah, I
really
just can't
think for
understand.
hundreds of millions of dollars
they could in 1969, and now it's running
in 2021.
So one of the problems they had was that they did have a pandemic, so that slowed them down in the past year and a half. But one of the issues people pointed out is they went to multiple contracts to build parts of it and then come together. And maybe that wasn't the best idea. In fact, I think 28 separate companies are doing different
28 separate companies involved in designing this suit.
It wasn't as
How can you
efficient as having
expect
one
this
or
to
two
run
groups
smoothly?
just do it all together, which is then blown out
on
that
time.
timeline. So it is a bit of a disappointment, as you said. It's kind of hard to imagine they've gone this far over time. You know, the old spacesuits, or the ones they use now in low Earth orbit, aren't suitable as well as for the moon. And they also come in these one-size-fits-all. There's a small, medium, and large, and that's it. So if it's not the right size, you're out of luck. So they maybe went too complex with too many companies too quickly.
Okay. Yeah, maybe the old horse designed by a committee ends up a camel. Brad Tucker.
So for once, I actually agree with something I see on mainstream news, although I think Sky News Australia might be a bit better than most, or some of them at least. So this is the place that we might not be able to visit in 2024, thanks to spacesuits and Jeff Bezos, in part. Beautiful view. And that's the Earth from the moon. Thanks, Jeff. This is the reason SpaceX actually exists. It was the inspiration for SpaceX amongst other companies. If Elon Musk did not have the drive to colonize this planet, SpaceX wouldn't exist. And most likely we would not have stuff like Starlink and even potentially stuff like Tesla. Now the thing is, many people think, okay, cool, Starship is almost ready, and once it's ready we can go to Mars. Problem sorted. Not that easy. There's a lot of problems or potential problems in the way, and getting a super heavy lift vehicle or launch system that can take heavy things up to orbit, or large numbers of people up to orbit, is not the only problem. Now you've got a Starship. Now you're ready to leave. Not so quick. You still have to take into consideration the long-term effects of zero gravity on human bodies, as well as radiation. Now, radiation, there's many forms of radiation, and they are deadly. If you are not shielded properly, if you get a solar flare on the way and you don't get adequate shelter in time, you are potentially dead. Depends on the intensity, obviously. There is ways around this, however, and there's many suggestions, some of them believable or achievable and some not so much. In terms of gravity, that's a work in progress. The only real way of providing gravity at this stage, or sensible way at this stage, is rotational gravity. This is quite well illustrated in terms of the proposed space stations, or some of them at least. So like I said, there's many challenges in regards to going to Mars. Just some of them are gravity and radiation. Well, in terms of gravity, at this stage with our current level of technology, there's only one real solution in terms of gravity: rotational gravity. And some of the suggested future space stations, or illustrations of them, illustrate this quite good. The only place on this station that actually would have gravity is the outside of the circle. And that would be the section that's occupied by human beings, because that would be the part that has the gravity. The center of the space station would not have gravity. To simplify this quite a bit for you, it's like taking a bucket filled with water in your hand and swinging it around. Rotation stops the water from falling out. So in other words, it creates its own gravity to a degree. I know that's oversimplifying it, but at this stage, that's the only true option that can be considered. There was no real sense of urgency in creating a space station with gravity yet. Like you can see here, the International Space Station, obviously there's no gravity. So it's mainly used for experiments and advancing medicine and certain types of technology. There's no need for gravity here. It's not about comfort, it's about advancing technology and medicine and so forth. There's plans to build new space stations in the near future, and these space stations will be aimed at tourism mainly, and they will need to have gravity. Like you can see here, this is just one example of a space station that would support rotational gravity, and this is an example of one under construction. And the same could apply to spaceships living on long duration missions to the far reaches of our solar system. At this stage, it's our only way of reliably producing gravity. In terms of radiation, it's quite a challenge at this stage, and most space stations or spacecraft tend to have or will have areas shielded from radiation. Water and ice have even been suggested, but this could contribute a huge amount of weight, which would be difficult to get into space. There is some alternatives to water, lead, all these materials that we think we can use. There's even a suggestion for an electronic shield, which was covered by Angry Astronaut not so long ago. And that's just some of the challenges on the way to Mars. There's much or many more challenges involved in being on Mars, including food and the production of fuels for your journey back. So yeah, to take the fuel for your return journey with you would complicate things quite a bit, and SpaceX intends to create fuel on Mars. Everything that they need is on the surface and the atmosphere of Mars. So that's the reason behind the particular Raptor engine that Elon Musk and SpaceX uses, the Raptor engine, the fuel it uses, methane and oxygen, can be harvested from Mars itself, and that's the reasoning behind them using the Raptor engine that was designed for this specific fuel. At least this guy couldn't speak, so he was quiet, and hopefully he won't cause any delays in terms of Mars missions. But as per usual, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and as always, stay safe and don't be